Hi everybody, welcome to another Chats with Chaudhry. It's a glorious sunny day here in Surrey and I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend, Nicola Reid, who is, and I have to read this, it's quite a long job title, Associate Director, Product Management, Endotoxin Products, Microbial Solutions, easy for me to say, at Charles River. And we're going to be talking about horseshoe crab populations, LAL or LAL, and recombinant alternatives. So Nicola, how are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me here today. So it's not quite so sunny up here though, unfortunately. Cold and raining as usual in the north.
Is it? Oh, whereabouts in the north are you?
In the northwest, just between Liverpool and Manchester.
All right, okay, the posh bits then, basically.
In the tier 3 zone before.
Well, I hope everything's okay. Look, the last time I saw you actually was roughly around this time last year, when we were on the way back from Pharma Lab at Düsseldorf Airport. You know, so it's lots changed since then, hasn't it?
A lot has changed in a year. Yes, absolutely.
Right. So now, thank you for taking time out because I know you've got a very busy schedule, but we're going to be talking about horseshoe crabs. But before we start talking about them and their importance, perhaps for those who are not familiar with Charles River, you give me a very quick overview of the company and also your role within it.
Yeah, absolutely. So Charles River is actually a much larger company, contract research organisation, from early discovery, biologics, research models, etc. I work for the division called Microbial Solutions. So we work on solutions for quality control testing in the microbiology laboratories. So we focus on endotoxin testing, we focus on microbial identification, sterility, rapid sterility testing, etc. So we cover most of the quality control aspects within our division.
Right, and your role within that?
So I am Associate Director of Product Management. So my responsibility and my team's responsibility is to improve upon the products we currently have, but also look for future products and continuing innovation. And that's one wonderful thing about working at Microbial Solutions is we're continually innovating all the time. So it's very busy. I'm very lucky to have such a crazy job, so to speak, because we're always busy thinking about what the next thing is and what we can create. So that's my responsibility.
Right. Well, that is a nice segue actually, because let's talk about not necessarily the next thing, but the thing which is happening right now. And how has the current situation around COVID impacted your BU in terms of supporting your customers?
Absolutely. So obviously COVID's impacted everybody and the pharmaceutical supply sector continues, of course. Pharmaceuticals are still continuing to be manufactured and produced. I'm sure we'll get onto COVID vaccines as well at some point. That's a big thing also. So obviously we supply from my speciality, which is the endotoxin testing. We need to continue our supply to our customers to ensure they can test the final products and get them out the door. And there's ever the need for pharmaceutical products right now. So we've had to be innovative ourselves in the way that we work and change the way that we work so we can continue to manufacture, bring those products to the customer. So we only have essential people on site at our manufacturing sites. Obviously all the precautions are taken, shift work is done, etc., so that we can maintain that high level and make sure we can supply. But those that aren't directly involved in the manufacturing, we've all gone to remote working like most people in the globe. I think I speak for everybody when I say it's been an experience for everybody. I'm used to traveling quite a lot, so it's been very different for me. But obviously, we've all become used to this and working via Zoom and Teams and different things. And the same with our customers, working with our customers via Teams and Zoom as well, and having those discussions and meetings remotely now. And I think that's working really effectively. So anything we can do to support the customer, continue to support them remotely, that's what we're working on, right? Well, have been working on and continue to do so.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So let's talk about horseshoe crabs. Why are they important and why has there been a lot of recent interest in their status of the Atlantic horseshoe crab population in particular?
That's a really good question. So they're an extremely important creature. So some say they're millions of years old, they're a living fossil, and they're just wonderful in the fact that for those who aren't aware, I'll keep it basic. For anybody watching, they have a blue blood. It's blue because they have a copper oxygen carrier rather than the iron oxygen carrier that we have in humans. And they have a really special blood cell that clots in the presence of endotoxin. And it's their defense mechanism. Basically, when they're in the ocean, if they take a hit off something, then they form a clot in that place and prevent mass coagulation and death. So this was discovered many years ago by a number of scientists. One of them still around and speaks today, Dr. Levin, and they formed the LAL test from this, Limulus amoebocyte lysate. So Limulus is a species of the Atlantic horseshoe crab. Amoebocyte is the blood cell, and we lyse the blood cell to get what we need from that in order to produce the test. So that's what LAL stands for those who weren't sure.
I didn't know, so I'm glad you told me that. So
there you go. So once a year they come out of the water to spawn. So usually they're bottom dwellers in the ocean, but they come out once a year to spawn at high tides. And that's usually between April and July time. Sometimes changes slightly, but that's generally the rule. And when they come out to spawn and lay their eggs, that's when we can hand harvest them and we can take an aliquot of their blood. So we do quite get often, oh, do you bleed them to death and those kind of things? No. They have a valve that allows a sinus valve to take just a certain proportion of their blood, and then it shuts down, so we can't overbleed them, so to speak. And like a human as well, we track them so we don't pick up the same crab twice, but we would know as well you wouldn't be able to get any further blood. Just like if we went to donate 3 days later, they would probably struggle from a human perspective also. So we do that once every year over a number of months. We have a lot of people working and all the LAL vendors do as well. So they're extremely important to biomedical because every product that goes into your body, whether that be injectable, whether that be an implant, has to be tested for endotoxin. So at some point, you or your family, me and my family, injections, vaccinations, etc., have to be tested for endotoxin. So that comes from the blood of the horseshoe crab. So they've kind of saved almost everybody at some point in their lives, these wonderful creatures. So they're extremely important to us, but of course, they're a living creature. So there's a lot of concerns about their welfare, for one, which of course is extremely important, and then also their population status as well. So for the Atlantic horseshoe crab, there are other species in Asia, and those species in Asia are endangered, unfortunately, and hopefully things can be looked at there to improve that. The Atlantic horseshoe crab is actually very stable at the moment, and but there are people who are concerned about numbers increasing, declining, you know, the population movements within the horseshoe crab. So it's a big topic because, you know, people are worried, will we run out of horseshoe crabs? Are we looking after them? Are we conserving them in the way that we should be doing?
Sure.
So that's why it's a hot topic. And obviously with COVID vaccines coming along as well, people want to know, are we going to overuse this resource? So that's why they're so popular just now.
Right, okay. So you talked about the COVID vaccine. Will that increase the amount of LAL needed to test vaccines?
That's a really good question. And obviously the assumption is yes, and anybody would think so, because we do, you know, you're going to be testing more vaccines, you are going to need more LAL. But people think about the big numbers. So 5 billion vaccines are going to be made. That's just a phenomenal number of vaccines. But we make these, or not me personally, but the pharmaceutical companies make these in large batches. So you have very large batches, maybe 100,000, etc., batch sizes. So when you take the batch, you only test beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so we're not testing 5 billion vials of vaccines. I think the calculation for 5 billion vials of vaccines was 600,000 tests would be needed. And when we mean tests, we mean aliquots of the horseshoe crab blood. So we worked with Associates Cape Cod and Lonza to calculate how much more manufacturing does that mean for this COVID vaccine. And it will be just less than 1 extra day of manufacturing by all 3 vendors in order to cover everything that's required for the COVID vaccinations. So yes, we will need a little bit more. But it's not as much as people think it's going to be. It's an additional day. But there are other things out there, and I just want to touch on our cartridge technology. Our cartridge technology reduces the amount of horseshoe crab blood needed by 95%. That's a huge reduction. So if we're saying that we need 1 extra day's manufacturing to cover the test of COVID vaccines, that's assuming that they're using vials of LAL, which some customers do use. But if they were using cartridges, that's completely different. It's 95% less than 1 day's manufacturing. So very little extra would be required if the COVID vaccine is tested on cartridges.
Right.
It depends on which way the manufacturers go, of course, but that's a big thing for us. We're heavily invested in the conservation of the horseshoe crab. In South Carolina, where we're based, our manufacturing is based, there's a protection order. Nobody can use them for bait. They can only be used for biomedical. We have a high level of animal handling and welfare that we go through. And then on top of that, we also are trying to always look at methods that reduce the amount of LAL needed. So here's a number for you, actually, Rizwan. The moment there's about 75 million tests, LAL tests done globally every year. And we have the numbers are out there from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission of how many crabs are taken to do that. We calculated if every customer moved to cartridge technology, we would not need to bleed an extra crab, but we could cover 1 billion tests per year without using a extra single crab. So we could move from 75 million to 1 billion. That's quite significant. So I think the future is that we need to really look at microfluidics and reducing the amount of LAL. There are ways and possibilities to do that.
So, I mean, that's really interesting. And it's interesting that you mentioned, Lonza and ACCI as well, in terms of working together. So in terms of the impact on the ecosystem, though, obviously, if you are taking some extra horseshoe crabs out, which you will need to take some, whichever method you use with this cartridge or not, how will that speed up the impact on the ecosystem in terms of the horseshoe crabs and, than it was prior to the pandemic?
It's unlikely it's going to cause an extra impact. So as I discussed, there's a lot of procedures in place. People just don't go and collect them and do whatever they want with them. You have to be licensed to be able to handle horseshoe crabs. So we have licensed fishers, and this isn't just us. This is ACC and Lonza as well. We all use the same practices. So obviously we'll bring those horseshoe crabs in. They're very well looked after. They return to sea or to the spawning site within 24 hours. We actually are a much shorter time frame than that, but it has to be within 24 hours. With the extra that's needed, what we really need to look at is what is the impact on the horseshoe crab as a whole. So recent data that has just been released by the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission is that the mortality rate for biomedical research is approximately 15%. It recently got published that it was 40%, which is very high, but it was a mistake in the initial publication from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. They just rectified that. It's 15%. And actually Charles River's mortality rate is approximately 3%. So we could take more crabs in and it have very, very limited impact actually on the horseshoe crab population. So it's not that they're coming in and being killed, they're still returning and being able to continue to spawn. We have a very healthy population with that as well. So it really should have a huge impact on the ecosystem. But we are always encouraging customers to consider the cartridge technology just because of that huge reduction in need of lysate and therefore huge reduction in the need of the horseshoe crabs. So.
Right, okay. Well, you're actually talking about this subject next week at Pharma Lab, aren't you?
Yes, I'm going to touch on what the current data is that's been released from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission. As I say, there's two sides to what happens with the horseshoe crab. There's biomedical, which is ourselves, of course, and there's baiting. So they're still used for bait. So hundreds of thousands are collected and used for bait, and they die, of course, they're used for bait. There's bycatch from fisheries as well, and of course, they're just discarded. So we lose a lot with those two industries. What's wonderful about the report this year is we're seeing a reduction in use for bait, which is fantastic. We want to see a continued reduction. There is a slight increase for biomedical use. So that has increased by approximately 25%, the updated report. Again, before that, it was previously reported at an increase of 40%, I think it was, but now it's 25%. So there has been a slight increase in the need to collect horseshoe crabs, and we may see a little bit more of an increase with the COVID vaccine. But again, the more we can look at microfluidics, the better, because then we can reduce that need for the horseshoe crab.
Right. Okay. Now here's a question for you though. Well, what I should say is that if people want to listen to your presentation, if they're attending Pharma Lab or they haven't registered yet, the link for Pharma Lab will be above this video. So you can click on that and you can find out more about Nicola's presentation about the conference in general. And in fact, what I'm going to do as an extra bonus, which you didn't know about, is that I did a video with Nicola last year at Pharma Lab, live when we were still at shows.
When we were there at the show.
And Nicola did a great video with me. So I'm actually going to upload that onto YouTube and put the link for that with this video as well, so you can actually see Nicola presenting at last year's Pharma Lab as well. So
and just to add, obviously next week as well as talking about the horseshoe crabs, we're going to be talking about recombinant technology. Forgot to mention that, sorry, Rizwan. So there's a lot of discussion out there right now on alternative recombinant endotoxin testing technology, and is there a need for that to remove the need for the horseshoe crab? So just touch on that shortly. So as we said, the horseshoe crab is a protected species in many areas. So if we remove the need for them for biomedical use, they'll no longer be protected, so they're more at risk. So we need to keep that protection in place. And is recombinant the correct way to go? Well, I think all of the companies involved are invested in a future of recombinant somehow, microfluidics and recombinant, to help reduce this pressure on the horseshoe crab. However, currently data suggests that it's, we're not quite sure if it's as good as LAL at the moment. Everybody wants it to be, but unfortunately the data shows it's not quite good as, I was due to launch a new recombinant product, so I was really disappointed when I saw the data. We were looking forward to a new launch, and we've not been able to do that until we improve upon it. So that's going to be a focus of my presentation at Pharma Lab, and probably a number of other people's presentations, because it's the hot topic. But we really need to consider, when we're talking about endotoxin testing, it's about a product going into a patient and causing a pyrogenic response if there's the presence of endotoxin. So what we really need to look at also is if there's a significant difference between LAL and a recombinant method, is it significant anyway? Would it still cause a pyrogenic response in a human? So I think what we have to do is a lot more data, a lot more investigation into recombinant to look at these differences in results. How would that impact a human? So I think there is a future of recombinant, but right now it's probably too soon. I think we need to gather a lot more data, and we are doing a huge amount of R&D work on this and trying to get to the bottom of why it doesn't look quite as good as LAL. Everybody would love to have a synthetic alternative. So I do think down the line, we certainly will have a synthetic alternative. The LAL will always be there, but a synthetic will also help the horseshoe crab populations. But I think right now, I just want people to be aware that not to worry about the horseshoe crab populations. They look stable. There's no increase in mortality than there has been over the number of years. They're well looked after. All 3-4 companies are really invested in animal welfare and animal protection with the horseshoe crab. So there's no real concern about they're going to disappear within the next couple of years and we have to go to recombinant immediately. That is not the case. We have plenty of time to continue forward with LAL while we take our time to find the perfect alternative. So that'll be a main part of my discussion next week also.
And I'm sure it'll be quite an interesting debate, because I know not everyone necessarily agrees with it. So
no, this is absolutely true. Of course, you know, people, there are people who have certain vested interests in technology. So I'm sure there'll be some healthy debate, hopefully healthy debate next week, because as a scientific community, we need to discuss the results and we need to understand them and talk about them and try to continue to drive data and understand that data.
Great. Well, I think that's very true, and it's very, very important. And hopefully, we'll get some comments on this video as well, that we can encourage that debate as further.
Absolutely.
So one final question before we ask you, we can get more information, is Obviously, Charles River, as you mentioned, are not in isolation when they work in this market in terms of endotoxin testing and LAL solutions. So, what you mentioned, obviously, a couple already in terms of Lonza and ACCI there, but also bioMario there as well. So, if you're in endotoxin, why should they be working with Charles River, and what makes you unique as a business to work with?
It's a really good question. So I think there's two sides to this. Firstly, we have world-class technical support. We have a real global presence, a true global presence. So we have presence in every country, direct and via distributors. We have facilities in, I've not got the number at the top of my head now, but in numerous places across the globe,
Sure.
they have this global presence. So we're able to offer true technical support 24/7, which is wonderful. And I know that our customers do need that. So the customer service and the technical support are outstanding. And we do get that feedback from our customers that that's one of the reasons that they do stick with us. But the other side, and this is one of the reasons I love Charles River, as I mentioned earlier, is the innovation. We're continuously innovating, looking for new ways forward for endotoxin testing. How do we make it faster? How do we make it easier on horseshoe crabs? How do we make it more sensitive? So as well as looking at new instrumentation, new software. So as a product manager, we're constantly busy, and that's great to know that the company are continuously innovating. And I think that's what sets us aside from the other manufacturers currently, that we're always working towards the next best solution, and we'll always get the next best solution also. Our scientists are world-class, second to none. So I know that even as we taught the recombinant technology, even though it's not perfect now, I know they'll find a way, and we will have a perfect technology in the future. So that's my answer for that one.
All right. And if people want to know more about all the topics we talk about, the horseshoe crab, recombinant technology, LAL, and obviously more about Charles River, where can they get more information?
They can go to our website, which is criver.com, and you go to, you can find Microbial Solutions. There's a search bar. It's a big website because it's Charles River. So search bar at the top, you can type in Microbial Solutions or endotoxin, or you can type in horseshoe crab and it will take you to a microsite that has all the links for the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, etc., and all the information about the horseshoe crab as well. And then we have previous webinars that we've held about recombinant. So all the information is there on our website, or they can reach out to me directly. More than happy to talk to them.
Brilliant, Nicola. I appreciate you taking the time out to speak to me. I know you've got a very, very busy schedule, and your day stretches all the way into US time as well. So you have a very long day. I appreciate that.
I do.
And I know how it feels like as well. Don't worry. So all I can say is thank you very much for your time. If you want to find out more about what Nicola's talked about, then if you're at Pharma Lab next week, then obviously make sure you check out her presentations. And if you're not at Pharma Lab, you can check out the links, as Nicola mentioned, and I will put the link addresses above the video so you can click on that and look at some more information. Or hopefully, because it is a very interesting subject, and I know people have a lot of views on this, if you've got any comments that you agree or disagree, then put them in the comments box below, and we'd love to see if we can get a debate going on this as well. And I'm sure Nicola will be happy to answer any questions you've got.
Absolutely, of course.
So Nicola, all that's left is, as always, say thank you very much. It's lovely to see you. It's been a year since I last saw you properly.
I know, too long. It's lovely to see you too. Thank you so much.
It's lovely to see you. And to everybody else, and to Nicola, as always, until next time, stay well and stay safe. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.